Hi guys, Cameron Hawkins here, and I decided to do my part of the project on 70s rock sociology. Now, it's important to keep in mind that when it came to 70s rock, everything was the name rock was kind of all-encompassing. Everything was kind of thrown under the same umbrella, and everything wasn't put into subgenres until later years. And so, whenever you had your political views, the political views was being shared between, punk rock, progressive rock, hard rock, shock rock, glam rock, grunge, emo, indie rock, and alternative and heavy metal, because everybody kind of just saw that all of the kind of as the same thing at the time. And you look no further than any top 100 list, you're going to find Black Sabbath and Rolling Stones right next to people like the Bee Gees and John Lennon. So, quite a contrast there. And civil rights was still heavily talked about in many genres in America, but not so much in rock. If you went to the UK, they had an actual rock against racism movement, but at the time, not so much was going on in America in that specific subject. But you had people like the Rolling Stones who were anti-authoritarian. You had bands like the Runaways, which were helping with sexual equality because it was the first all-female band. You hadn't had anything like that before. And you had a lot of psychological and social issues talked about in Pink Floyd's most famous album, Dark Side of the Moon. I know that's arguable, but still. They talked about a vast amount of things, but to put it all into one kind of category, as they themselves said, what are the forces in modern life that are alienating people from one another and their hopes? And that's essentially the whole premise of the album itself. And then you had people like Aerosmith, who, specifically in their song Dream On, was using, that to show, people wanting to be somebody else, something better, And then Rock Against Racism, let's talk about that a little bit, with the UK movement. At the time, there was a lot of racism going around the country, and this movement was literally just there for bands to come together and just put out their views on the whole subject. And they had quite a few shows about it, but it wasn't just rock. They included anybody. If you wanted R&B, soul, you could all come, and they all played for the same cause. But a few songs you could look up is one by Steel Pulse, and the name of the song is the Ku Klux Klan, which is a really nice reggae piece. And then you have White Man in Hammersmith Palace by The Clash. And also another good song, specifically within the UK movement. Okay, and you had multiple LGBTQ icons come out at the time. You had David Bowie, who was specifically said he was a closeted heterosexual. And he came out as being bi at some time in the 70s. And then you also had people like Freddie Mercury. With Bohemian Rhapsody, a lot of people debated whether that was his coming out song due to the lyrical content, which was very poetic at times and gave you a lot of time to kind of just look into it yourself. But when Freddie Mercury himself was asked about that, he said, "I think people should just listen to it and think about it, and then make up their own minds as to what it means to them." Freddie never really publicly came out, I don't think at all, until way later on in his life. And there was cases where his bandmates even said they were kind of clueless as to it. He was Freddie. And then, also we got Elton John, who came out as bisexual at the age of, in 76. And the dress of the 70s rock was kind of all over the place. Again, because of kind of everyone throwing all those bands into just rock. Okay, so androgyny and femininity was massive in that time. Queen, David Bowie, look at any photos, like the two from the previous slide. They both weren't too worried about what others thought of them. They were kind of just doing their own thing, emitting this awesome stage presence. But then you had bands like Pink Floyd, who pretty much just went in jeans and a t-shirt. They didn't care. Their music spoke for itself. And then Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones, among others, those are the ones that when you think about the 70s rock fashion, you're usually thinking about them. They kind of had that whole glamorous look about them. It was still slightly feminine, but they were pulling in. They were pulling in. And if you just look at Kiss, there was really absolutely no guidelines to what they did. People at the time just kind of did whatever they wanted to and expressed themselves however they felt like it. So the fashion was all over the place. And you can see there, Kiss kind of just, yeah. All right, and so language expressions, which are essentially just idioms. And it's really interesting because if you look at Dream On by Aerosmith, Dream On is typically used whenever, someone says, hey, I'm going to go do this ridiculous, grandiose thing, and then somebody would say, dream on, like it's not going to happen. And they kind of flipped the meaning of that in the song Dream On. It's kind of empowering you, like how musicians, need to strive for these great, grandiose things, and so long as you stick with it, you might get what you need one day for that. And Another One Bites the Dust is just absolutely full of language expressions, idioms all over the place, and like look no further than the actual song title. And just to pick a few, how long can you stand the heat? I mean, clearly not talking about heat, and I'm standing on my own 2 feet. Well, obviously, but they're talking about other things and referencing other things going on at the time. And so, with my conclusion, views were all over the place, but many bands of the 70s were avidly trying to distance themselves from the peace and love mentality that came out of the 60s. And with civil rights, it was still being discussed, like I said, but in different genres, and specifically with the rock scene in the UK. And there was plenty of advancements for the LGBTQ communities. Many icons came out of that time. And they brought representation to a community that previously didn't have much representation at all. And then, well, with the dress, when you think of the rock star look, that essentially came directly from the 70s. So, thank you guys for your time.